Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wrestling with Green Pinstripes. I'm your host, Kalind, and on this episode, we're going to be talking about the WrestleMania 34 review. Let's get on with it, shall we? Overall, there were 14 matches on the card, 3 on the kickoff, and 11 on the main card. So let's start off with the kickoff, shall we? The first match of the kickoff was the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. It was an okay match, nothing too special. I mean, the only thing that was interesting about it was Matt Hardy, because on Twitter, he was making the best out of the situation, and he was saying that he's going to resume his Expedition of Gold after the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. And what was the only thing that was interesting was that Bray Wyatt made his return to the ring after Ultimate Deletion. And Bray Wyatt turned face. He became a face for the first time in his career. How long will this face turn last? I have no idea. But that was the only thing interesting about the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal was that Matt Hardy, or Woken Matt, pretty much secured the Andre the Giant trophy. That's all I gotta say for that. And for the commentators of this match were Jim Ross, Jerry the King Lawler, and Byron Saxton. I mean, I liked it that Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler were part of the WrestleMania, but why did they call one match on the kickoff? That I don't understand. And it was reported, as of this recording, that prior to WrestleMania 34, Jerry Lawler suffered a stroke prior to WrestleMania 34. And I was like, it's amazing how he recovered so quickly before WrestleMania weekend, despite suffering a stroke. And I couldn't even notice it on commentary that he suffered a stroke. That's something amazing. But that could also be the reason why Byron Saxton was the third guy on commentary for that. The next match of the kickoff was Cedric Alexander versus Mustafa Ali in the Cruiserweight Championship Finals, which was a tournament that was taking place throughout 205 Live. I wished this was on the main card because this was the best match of the kickoff. I have to say this was the best match of the kickoff, and I wished it was on the main card, but beggars can't be choosers, so it was already a crowded main roster card, so you gotta make the best out of a bad situation. But it was definitely a pretty good match. The commentators for this match were the standard 205 Live announce team of Vic Joseph and Nigel McGuinness, and I know that 205 Live GM Drake Maverick was at ringside watching all of this unfold, and I gotta say this is definitely a pretty good match. And what I was impressed was that this match was on the 6 p.m. hour of kickoff, because the kickoff started at 5 p.m. this past Sunday as of this recording, excuse me. And at 6 o'clock this match was on the kickoff, which happens to be that the USA Network was airing the 6 p.m. version of the kickoff. So, it's pretty a good indicator that maybe 205 Live will move to cable TV for TV negotiations for 2019's TV deal. Who knows what could happen, but it was a pretty good match. And at the end, Cedric Alexander finally wins the Cruiserweight Championship. He was one of the top guys of the 205 Live brand for since the Cruiserweight division restarted on Monday Night Raw before it became its own brand on 205 Live. And these guys Mustafa Ali and Cedric Alexander, those guys are going to make 205 Live one of the biggest I would say a big brand, but not like Raw or SmackDown, but it's definitely, you could say it's definitely a third brand that people can actually be proud of, to be a fan of. And I gotta say that I know that since the Cruiserweight tournament, the 205 Live guys, or as I would say, Cruiserweight division has been slowly being phased out from Raw. They only made 2 or 3 appearances since then, but they didn't make a single appearance in the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view that took place. But
I would say that I think they should end their working agreement with Raw and start a new working agreement with SmackDown, because I would say that the SmackDown mid card definitely needs some guys that could fill the role, and I would say some of the cruiserweights that aren't going to get a chance to wrestle for the cruiserweight title, they could have an opportunity to wrestle for the mid card for the mid card titles on SmackDown. That's my 2 cents on that. The last match of the kickoff was the Women's Battle Royal, and this was definitely infamous for some of the wrong reasons, because initially when they announced the Women's Battle Royal, it was originally called the Fabulous Moolah Battle Royal, but after so much outrage about it from the fans, because Fabulous Moolah has a terrible history as a person. I mean, Snickers pretty much pressured WWE to change their name, so they went with a generic WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal. Nothing wrong with it, but I would have definitely named it after a Sensational Sherry or something like that. But a generic name is fine. But I noticed that NXT women were represented pretty much for a good portion of the Women's Battle Royal. So I gotta say, the future is pretty bright for NXT, especially in the women's division. I just wish there was better storytelling, but I mean, you gotta take what you get. That's all I gotta say. You gotta take what you can get. And it looked like Bayley won the Women's Battle Royal, but it looks like Naomi was hiding underneath the ring to wait for the opportunity, and she was the last person standing in the WrestleMania Women's Battle Royal. The commentators for the Women's Battle Royal were Michael Cole, Corey Graves, Beth Phoenix, which was announced ahead of time, and Paige, which was a surprise announcement. We did not find out that Paige was going to be on the commentary team for WrestleMania's Women's Battle Royal until the match itself started. And that was the end of the kickoff. On to the main card. It was the Intercontinental Championship in a triple threat match between The Miz, the defending champion, versus Finn Balor, versus Seth Rollins. I gotta say, it was a pretty good match to set the tone of WrestleMania, and both Balor and Rollins, they were definitely the ones that put it out all on the line. And at the end, Seth Rollins wins the Intercontinental Championship and is now the Grand Slam Championship. He has now won the WWE Championship. He has won the United States Championship. He's won the tag titles on a few times, and now he is Intercontinental Champion. So, Grand Slam Rollins. That's a pretty good t-shirt slogan. Grand Slam Rollins. I would say that's better than Monday Night Rollins. I gotta say that. Grand Slam Rollins. I like the sound of that. The next match of the WrestleMania card was the SmackDown Women's Championship, which was Charlotte versus Asuka. Now, you would say, why would a Raw roster member challenge a SmackDown roster member? Well, keep in mind, Asuka won the Women's Battle Royal, so she was allowed to choose which women's champion to face, and she chose Charlotte at Fastlane, and it was a pretty good match. I mean, both the women were very talented, and it was definitely pretty good. But the one thing that really surprised me at the end was Asuka tapping out to Charlotte's figure eight, and prior to that match, Asuka had an undefeated streak for such a long time since debuting in NXT, and now she lost one match due to submission. So, yeah, the Superdome is cursed. The Louisiana Superdome is cursed. I don't care if it's called Mercedes-Benz Superdome. I'm still calling it the Louisiana Superdome. It's cursed. And you know why it's cursed? Because on the Super Bowl between the 49ers and Ravens, prior to that game, the 49ers had an undefeated streak at the Super Bowl. They never lost it until that game. And at WrestleMania 30, prior to that match, Undertaker never lost at WrestleMania, and he lost that match. And prior to Asuka versus Charlotte, Asuka never lost any match in WWE, and she lost that match too. So yeah, 3 undefeated streaks were on the line, and 3 came to an end. So yeah, the Louisiana Superdome is cursed. the Louisiana Superdome is cursed. Anyway, next up was the United States Championship match in a Fatal 4-Way where Randy Orton was defending the title against Bobby Roode, Rusev, and Jinder Mahal. Now, the feud between Jinder Mahal and Randy Orton and Bobby Roode was happening since February. So, don't say that this was just a random match. This was, going on since February. But, due to fan apathy, they added Rusev in the last 2 weeks of this build because Rusev has been getting over with the Rusev Day chants. So, it was an okay match. It was pretty short. And at the end, Jinder Mahal pinned Rusev to win the United States Championship. So therefore, in the storyline wise sense, Jinder Mahal ruined Rusev Day. Jinder Mahal, he ruined Rusev Day, and he proclaimed that Rusev Day is canceled. Not at the match, but on Twitter later that night. Well, Rusev Day is every day. It's never going to get canceled as long as Rusev said so. That's all I got to say. Next match was the mixed tag match between the Authority, Triple H, and Stephanie McMahon versus Kurt Angle and newest signee Ronda Rousey, formerly of the UFC and Strikeforce and many other mixed martial arts promotions. And this was a pretty fun match. I had really low expectations of it because how the build was so silly, but this was a really, really fun match. Originally this was a mixed tag match, but then somewhere in the middle it became intergender. You had Ronda Rousey punching Triple H, and you had Kurt Angle putting Stephanie in the ankle lock. I was like, this is a really fun match. Ronda looked strong in her debut, and Kurt Angle, this was his first WrestleMania since 2006. That's how long it has been that Kurt Angle has competed at WrestleMania. After WrestleMania 22 in Chicago, Kurt Angle left the WWE to go to TNA, and he spent a decade, a little more than a decade over there at TNA before coming back to the WWE last year. So, yeah, Kurt Angle did pretty well in his first WrestleMania since 2006. So, it was a pretty fun match. Funny a little bit, but still, it was a pretty entertaining match. Next match was the SmackDown Tag Titles in a triple threat match between the New Day, the Usos, the defending champions, and the Bludgeon Brothers, who were previously known as Luke Harper and Eric Rowan of the Wyatt family. This was a pretty forgettable match. I have to say this was pretty forgettable because it was very short, and plus there are some time constraints. So yeah, it was pretty forgettable. Not that great of a match. But I am happy for the Usos because they've been on the main roster since 2010, and it took them 8 years to get on the main card of WrestleMania. They were on the pre-show in 2012, 14, 15, 16. They weren't even on any of the card in last year, and now they finally made it to the main card. So I am pretty happy for the Usos, but at the end of the day, the Bludgeon Brothers won the SmackDown Tag Titles, and this is probably the end for the Usos on SmackDown. They could be heading to Raw. Let's see what happens. Next match was an impromptu match between John Cena, because for several weeks, John Cena has been calling out The Undertaker, and finally, The Undertaker responded, and it wasn't really a proper match. This was a 4 or 3 minute squash. This was really disappointing. The Undertaker versus Cena, that was major disappointment. The build-up sucked, and the match itself sucked. So it's like that dream match that so many fans had in mind. It went kaput. This was disappointing, but would they face off next year in a proper match? I have no idea. But if they don't, this was a waste of time, that build. That was a complete waste. But if they do, maybe I would change my tone in next year's review of WrestleMania. we'll see what happens. Because next year, WrestleMania is going to be in my backyard in the state of New Jersey. Even though like most of the activities are going to be in Brooklyn for that. I'll explain it later on in the podcast when it gets closer to WrestleMania 35. After that Undertaker-Cena match, the 2018 WWE Hall of Fame class was introduced to the crowd. And, of course, Goldberg had his one final entrance at a WrestleMania, because last year's WrestleMania, Goldberg was defending the Universal Championship. And at this year's WrestleMania, he's in the Hall of Fame. So, yeah, a lot has changed in a year. Next up was the match between, it was a tag match with the SmackDown Commissioner Shane McMahon and SmackDown General Manager Daniel Bryan versus Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. It was a good match, not the best tag match, but I mean, like, it was really fun to see Daniel Bryan back competing in this ring. I mean, like, prior to Daniel Bryan getting cleared, I had no idea how this feud between Shane and Sami KO was going to end. I had no idea. I mean, like, before Daniel Bryan got cleared, it was, like, really, like, a wasted storyline. I mean, like, it wasn't interesting. It felt boring. But then when Daniel Bryan got the clearance to return to the ring, that's when it got really interesting, because Daniel Bryan is, like, one of the most over baby faces in the WWE. I mean, like, that's how, like, exciting it was to see Bryan come back at competing at WrestleMania for the first time in a really long time. I mean, like, that's how exciting it was. So, yeah, I mean, like, it wasn't a great match, but yeah, it was pretty nice to see Daniel Bryan, come back to the ring. I mean, like, as he said, when you fight for your dreams will fight for you. That was Daniel Bryan's quote on the night that he announced that he was cleared to return on SmackDown. He said, "When you fight for your dreams will fight for you." And as of the stipulation, Sami and Kevin, they were fired from SmackDown on the day that Bryan announced his return to the ring. And in the stipulation, had Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens won, they would have been reinstated onto the SmackDown roster. But because Shane and Daniel Bryan won, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are in storyline free agents. So yeah, I mean, we got to see what's gonna happen for Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens going forward. Next match of the night was the Raw Women's Championship between Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax. I had low expectations for this match. I mean, it was an alright match. I mean, I didn't like the storyline of Alexa Bliss calling Nia Jax fat. I really hated it. Because it reminded me of the time when Lay Cool was calling Mickie James fat back in 2010, and it really pissed me off. I hated that storyline, and I hated this storyline too. But it was an alright match, and at the end, Nia Jax won her first championship in the WWE, winning the Raw Women's Championship. So yeah, at least Nia Jax had a pretty good ending. That's all I gotta say. There's a silver lining to that. Nia Jax finally vanquished the bully who was mentally torturing her. Keep in mind that Alexa Bliss is 5'1", Nia Jax is 6 foot. I meant Nia Jax was bigger than Alexa in size, but Alexa Bliss was playing mind games. She even made Nia Jax cry on Monday Night Raw. It was like, finally, Nia Jax vanquished the bully who was mentally torturing her in that storyline. So yeah, I mean, that's a silver lining. That's a silver lining I'll accept. The next match of the evening was the WWE Championship where AJ Styles defended his championship against the 2018 Men's Royal Rumble winner, Shinsuke Nakamura. I definitely liked Shinsuke's entrance in that one. I didn't expect that he was going to have a guitarist playing Nakamura's theme, but it was pretty good. I mean, it was a good match, but not a great match. It was a good match, but I think a lot of fans had a really high expectation expectations for this match because of Wrestle Kingdom and New Japan. But keep in mind, New Japan and WWE are apples and oranges. I mean, you can't really compare the two matches because New Japan is more wrestling based while WWE is more storyline based. So yeah, I mean, like, I can understand why people were disappointed, but I had no expectations for this match. Yeah, the build-up was kind of underwhelming because it was on SmackDown, but yeah, I mean, like, it was not a bad match. I mean, they had the same amount of time as the mixed tag match, but I mean, like, nobody noticed it because, I mean, the crowd was mostly dead. I mean, not their fault and not the two guys' fault, but I think it was mostly because it was a long WrestleMania. So, yeah, I mean, like, it was like a good match, but the post-match beatdown where Nakamura turned heel, low blow to AJ Styles, I mean, like, that got the crowd talking. I mean, like, they were, like, in shock. And I was in shock, too, because, like, for the weeks leading up to Mania, I thought that Styles was going to turn heel, but it turns out Nakamura snapped and turned heel. So, it's going to be pretty intriguing to see what happens with Shinsuke Nakamura as a heel. And I found out that Nakamura was a heel for most of his New Japan career. So, I think this is his comfort zone. I gotta say, this is probably his comfort zone, being a heel than a babyface. So, yeah. Let's see what happens. The second to last match of WrestleMania was the Raw Tag titles, where The Bar, Sheamus, and Cesaro were defending the championships against Braun Strowman and a partner to be announced. Before the match started, Braun Strowman picked out a kid from the audience named Nicholas, who was 10 years old. I was like, Braun Strowman picked a 10-year-old kid to be his tag partner. And you know what the weirdest part was? They won the match. They won the damn match. That's how weird it was. It was so weird. I was like, I mean, it would have been, like, okay if it was, like, any other pay-per-view, but this is WrestleMania. I was like, why are you doing this weird-ass storyline? I don't get it. But it turns out that later in the evening, I found out later on that Nicholas, the kid, is actually the son of WWE referee John Cone. So, yeah. I mean, kudos to John Cone's son for getting a WrestleMania moment. But, kid, you're 10 years old. I mean, go to school, get an education, and if you want to become a professional wrestler, you have to you gotta train with somebody. So, kid, stay in school. All right. Last match was the Universal Championship with Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar. Okay match, not really the best. I mean, if it was on any other, a B pay-per-view, it would have been fine, but this was WrestleMania, and it was the last match of the night, so the fans completely tuned out. They were chanting, "This is awful," and I've heard reports that they were throwing beach balls during the event, and it was a kind of a boring match. I gotta say, this was boring. I mean, I'm not saying it because the fans were, saying it. I thought for myself, but, a lot of fans were saying this was, the worst match of the card, but I can understand because it was WrestleMania, but it wasn't exactly the worst, but definitely not WrestleMania worthy. Definitely not WrestleMania worthy. I would give this match an F for that match. I mean, the two matches that downgraded this pay-per-view were Undertaker versus Cena and Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. I mean, Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, the storyline build was good, but the match itself was pretty underwhelming. I was disappointed with this one. I mean, it's WrestleMania. It's the main event. You're not supposed to have an underwhelming match to end the show. I was like, if you want to end the show, put it on a high note. I mean, when Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns faced each other at WrestleMania 31, I mean, they put on a good match. I mean, yeah, Seth Rollins cashed in Money in the Bank in the middle of the match, but still, before Seth Rollins joined in the picture, it was still a pretty good match. But this one was, underwhelming. Completely disappointing. I mean, Like, I was kind of mentally ready to see Roman Reigns win the Universal Championship, even though I wasn't exactly too happy about it. But I was, like, mentally prepared for it. And at the end, Brock Lesnar retained the Universal Championship, and he's been Universal champion for over a year. It's like, what a waste of that title. It was like Brock Lesnar has held it for over a year, and he's still Universal Champion. I don't get it. I definitely don't get it. Why is this guy still the Universal Champion? I get it that he's a special attraction, but he could be a special attraction without the title. Seriously. What are they thinking? And then, they had the audacity to re-sign Brock Lesnar to a short-term deal after WrestleMania? Come on, man. Overall, I'm going to give WrestleMania 34 a C+ at best. This was going to be a B, but those two matches that I mentioned downgraded it to a C because how bad they were. Undertaker versus Cena and Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. It was bad. I mean, I didn't really have that much of an issue with Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. It was really the placement of the match. It was placed on the last match of the show when... I mean, if you swapped AJ Nakamura and Lesnar Reigns, if the AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura was the last match of the card, I think I would have graded it a little bit higher, and I think fans would have accepted it a little bit more because it definitely had an intriguing story post-match of Styles versus Nakamura. But this one... underwhelming. I mean, I'm disappointed in Vince McMahon for putting Roman Reigns in a fourth straight WrestleMania to close the show. I mean, Roman Reigns has main evented WrestleMania for 4 straight years, dating back to 2015. I was like, here's my message to Vince McMahon. End it. Stop. Okay? Stop. John Cena, when he was the face of the company, he did not main event WrestleMania for that many years straight. All right, I mean, I don't know if he main evented 31. Actually, no, he did not. But main evented 21. He did not, but he definitely main evented 22 and 23. He did not John Cena did not main event 24, 25, 26. He did main event 27 to 29. That's for sure. And 30, he took a back seat, was in the mid-card. 31, Cena was in the mid-card for 31. 32, Cena missed a Mania due to injury. 33, Cena was in a silly mixed tag match. And 34, this one... he was in a silly match, I wouldn't say silly, but it was a disappointing match against The Undertaker. So, yeah, I mean, when Cena was the face of the company, he did not main event WrestleMania for that straight years. If you're trying to make Roman Reigns the face of the company, you gotta let him grow, naturally. Cena got over on his own. I mean, you can't just force Roman Reigns to, be, a fan favorite. You gotta let him grow into it. You gotta let him earn it. That's all I gotta say. You gotta let him earn it. That's all I gotta say for the WrestleMania 34 podcast. And this is the Wrestling with Green Pinstripes podcast, and I will see you next time.